I made a decision. I set a standard to never give up on my goal again. Like, think about that. That's how I'm starting my day. The first goal of the day, simply get up. And I'm already failing myself. So I made a decision never to hit the snooze button again. So here's the thing though. There's going to be some nights I'm tired. There's going to be some nights I go to bed later than expected. So what do? Is I set it up. Hey, it's David Hill here, and man, I'm excited to take you into this time management course, little short course, as a matter of fact. And I call it, because when we say time management, man, that sounds kind of boring, right? Because the reality is you can't really manage time. Time is just something that's there. It's the one thing that makes us all equal. It's the one thing, doesn't matter how wealthy you are or how successful you are, we still all have the same amount of time in our days. So what I'm going to share with you are 4 simple strategies that are going to help you make the most out of the time and be the most productive with the time, and also get the most fulfilling life. That's really what this is about today, is having not just success, not just wealth, but fulfillment in your life. So let me go through these 4 strategies. I'm going to share. And if you guys want to join me, I am streaming in Clubhouse, but I'm also on StreamYard, and this is going to be live on LinkedIn, Facebook, as well as my YouTube channel, which you can find me on any of those. Just go to David I. Hill. All right. So again, the 4 simple strategies to get control of your life and your schedule. And the 4 strategies, it almost sounds too simple, right? So we're talking about number 1 is set it. So we're going to set it. And we're going to get into what that means in a minute. The next one is going to be plan it. All right. We're going to plan. Okay. Planning. It takes planning. Okay. Once you set something, it takes planning. We're going to block it. It means we're going to time block. We're going to put together a calendar. And we're going to show you how to time block. And then finally, we're going to protect it. We're going to protect our time. And once we go through all 4 of these, you're going to understand exactly what I'm talking about. A lot of these, I'm going to give credit to the One Thing book. I am a certified trainer for the One Thing book by Gary Keller, and that is where I learned a lot of these strategies. So let me jump into the first one, which is set it. And what we're talking about is, first and foremost, is standards. I remember it was 2009. From the moment I opened my eyes in the morning, like the first thing I did was I looked at my phone. That was the first thing. I was in my phone. I was dealing with people's email. Like, I was reading people's emails from the night before. I was looking at texts. I was literally consumed by my real estate business, and I was consumed by other people's requests of what they wanted from me. And, I was starting to just hate. I'm going to use the word hate. I don't like to use the word hate, but I'm going to use the word hate. I was starting to really hate, or at least dislike at a really high level, the business that I had loved for so long, and the business that I had been doing for around 7 years, and was making more money than I ever made in my life. But I had zero control of my time, and I had zero control of my schedule, and I was not satisfied or fulfilled. And I remember John Alexandrov was my first, business coach that came into my life. And the office I worked for back then, he must have knew how stressed I was, because, he had John come in to teach a class, and I didn't even go to the class. Like, I skipped the class because I didn't go to hardly any classes back then, because I didn't have time to do anything. But what he did was, after the class, he actually brought John to my office and said, "Hey, I want you to meet David." And he introduced us. And I ended up having lunch with John a couple of days later, and I ended up hiring him to be my coach. And it was the first time I hired a business coach. And honestly, I wrote a check for $17,000 to hire John, which was a ton of money back then. But I'll tell you that one of the first things we worked on, first and foremost, was setting standards. And that's why I'm going to set it as the first thing. The first thing we had to do to get control of my schedule, my time, my career, everything I had going on, was I had to set some standards for myself. Okay. I had to set the standards. I had to set a time. Okay. This is the time that I'm willing to be available for people. Okay. This is the time that I'm willing to take phone calls. This is the time I'm willing to actually, you know, talk to people, take requests, show properties, whatever I was doing back then, go on appointments. This is the time I set standards. This is the time that I'm going to go to bed going forward. These are the times I'm going to wake up. This is the time I'm going to answer my phone or even, you know, with my assistant. I had to set standards with my assistant. So the first thing we're talking about is just simply setting standards. And it really can start with the first standard is to make a decision on, you know, what your job's going to look like, your career, or the standards you're going to set for yourself. And once I did that, the next thing I had to do is I set a standard of what time I was going to wake up in the morning. Now, back then I was sleeping till, I don't know, 7:30. And I thought that was pretty early. I mean, relatively it was compared to what I was doing years before. You know, I had a 9 to 5. I worked for a publishing company, and I'd get up at 8:30 and roll into the office by 9, and I changed that. And, I wanted to change it. So, I was getting up a little earlier, but again, first thing I was in my phone. So I set standards now. I was not checking my messages, but the one of the most important was the time I was going to wake up. So back then, I wanted to get up earlier. It was a little bit of a struggle, which I'm going to get into in a minute. But the first thing I had to do is I had to set a standard on what time I was going to wake up. And I made a decision, you know what? I'm going to get up at 6:30. Okay, I'm getting up at 7:15 now. I want to get up at 6:30. So I set that standard, and that was the time I was going to get up. And I remember, about 3 years ago, I had Mel Robbins on my podcast, and Mel wrote the book, The 5-Second Rule. Phenomenal, unbelievable book. I would encourage everybody to get a copy of that book. And one of the things she said to me, and as a matter of fact, you can, if you Google David Hill, Mel Robbins, you can listen to the interview. It's fantastic. She goes deep on some stuff and just shares some of her challenges. But one of the things she said to me that always stuck with me is she talked about the time we wake up, and she talked about the alarm clock, and she talked about that snooze button. And she said, when you hit the snooze button, you are essentially giving up on the first goal you set for the day. I want you to think about that. When you hit the snooze button, you're just saying to yourself, the goal I set last night was not important. And you're giving, and I swear, once I heard her say that, it was a game changer for me, because I would hit the snooze. My clock would go off at 7. I'd hit the snooze 4 times and get out of bed at 8. Once I heard her say that, I made a decision. I set a standard to never give up on my goal again. Like, think about that. That's how I'm starting my day. The first goal of the day, simply get up, and I'm already failing myself. So I made a decision never to hit the snooze button again. So here's the thing, though. There's going to be some nights I'm tired. There's going to be some nights I go to bed later than expected. So what do? Is I set it up. I have multiple alarms. So my normal alarm goes off at 4:45. That's the time I get up 9 out of 10 times. However, there are other times, maybe I got in late. Maybe my wife and I had date night. Something happened where, I'm getting in at midnight. Now it's probably not the smartest thing for me to do. Get up at 4:45. So I have an alarm for 6 a.m. So I set the alarm for 6 a.m. instead of setting the alarm for 4:45 and then hitting the snooze button 5 times and then feeling like I'm a straight loser. And I'm just being honest. That's how I feel. And when I do that, it permeates into all the other areas of my day. It affects my gym, and it affects my meditation. It affects everything. So the first step is set it, and we're talking about standards. All right. The next one is going to be plan it. So I already talked about the wake up time. But now here's the thing when it comes to wake up time. See, I struggled with this. I struggled with this for a while because I was like, I'm going to start getting up earlier and I'm just going to do it. And I'd put it in, I'd set my alarm for an earlier time. But then what would I do? I'd hit the snooze button and I'd be like, this just doesn't make sense. I don't understand why. I want to get up earlier, but yet I'm hitting the snooze button. And what ended up happening is I started to realize something about myself. And this is when I became a one thing trainer. If you haven't read Gary Keller's book, The One Thing, I would encourage you to pick up the book. But one of the things, the main premise, not one of the things, the probably the one most important thing they talk about in the book is the domino run. You know, the domino, and how one domino can knock down another domino, which can knock down another domino, which can knock down another domino. And then the better we line up the dominoes, the more effective we can be in certain areas. And I was so struggling. Like I was getting frustrated with myself. Like, well, I'm setting my clock earlier, but I'm not getting up. Or if I did get up, I'd be so tired that I just was like groggy, and it was just not productive. So what I did was I started looking at all the dominoes. And what I realized was, in order for me to get up earlier and try, hey, maybe some of you are way smarter than me, but for me, I realized in order for me to get up earlier, I had to start going to bed earlier. So I said, okay, that makes tons of sense. If I go to bed earlier, then that'll work. But what ended up happening is, I'd go in my room to go to bed, but I wouldn't be tired. I'd lay in bed for an hour, hour and a half, and then finally fall asleep. So what I did was I had to look at the dominoes again, and I realized, okay, in order for me to go to bed earlier, I would have to eat dinner earlier, because at the time we were actually eating dinner at around 7:00, 7:30 at night. So we had to change our dinner time. But then the other thing we found, but still that didn't work. And then I realized, holy cow, the kids, my daughter, Samara, she's staying up late. So we had to get her settled down earlier. So we had to start settling her down at an earlier time as well, which obviously played in. And then not that even that didn't work fully. What I realized I needed another domino is I had to stop drinking caffeinated beverages before 3 p.m. I had to give up the iced coffee, because what was happening is, not only was I not winding down, but I'd go in bed and I'd still be a little wired from the caffeine I was drinking. I was drinking iced coffees like all day. So once I started really looking in putting these dominoes in place, I realized all the things I had to do in order for me to get up earlier. And yeah, was it easy? No, it wasn't easy out of the gate, but over time, everything worked out. Okay, we got our daughter Samara was winding down a bit easier, right? She was a baby back then. We got, we were eating dinner earlier, so it was easier for everybody. I'd stopped drinking caffeine after 3 p.m. So by 9:30, 10, I was tired. I was ready for bed. The alarm clock went off in the morning. I was able to just get up. Okay, here's a pro tip, by the way. This is a pro tip from my friend Jarek Robbins. See this hydro flask water bottle I'm holding up. Keep one of those right next to your nightstand. So the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is take a nice chug. I'll tell you, I'm going to take a chug right now. All you need to do is take a nice chug just like that, and it will wake you right up. I promise you, it's like magic. It energizes your body. And the reason I use the hydro flask is I want it nice and cold. Okay, there's other brands you can use. That's the one I have. I want my water nice and cold. So I fill it up right before I go to bed. By the way, I start winding down, getting ready for bed around 9:30, and I put it on the nightstand so it's there. As soon as I wake up in the morning, I'm going to grab that and I'm going to chug it down. Besides the fact that I have dry mouth and it just energizes my whole body. It's just amazing. So there's a pro tip from my good friend Jarek Robbins. All right, so I hope you guys understood that domino run on how I personally was able to start getting up earlier. So now we're going to jump to the next one, which is block it. Okay, we're talking about blocking it now. So when I talk about blocking it, what I'm referring to is my calendar system. Do you notice I said calendar system? I didn't just say calendar. Calendar system. See, that's the thing. So for me, I do both electronic and I do paper. I do them both. Because for me, what I want to do is I want to have it in my electronic calendar so that it's there and it's always recurring. But then every morning I pull it into my paper calendar. This is part of my morning routine. It's part of the routine I do every single morning, where it helps me focus. Not only do I get to focus on my day, but I get to create intentionality around my day. So what I do is I have everything I use Google. I use the Google Calendar, which is super easy. and I create recurring events. That's what I'm doing, creating recurring events. But then every morning before that, right now I use the Brendan Bouchard Daily Planner, which I love. I've been using it for around 2 years. Absolutely love it, because what I have to do is I have to take all my appointments for the day, and I move them from the electronic calendar onto the Brendan Bouchard planner. And then I create intention on each, like, what do I want from each appointment? What do I want to bring to the table with each appointment? And now I'm so focused on my day, and there's so much clarity around that. The other thing I want you to think about is I want you to determine now, as you're building out your calendar, and in a minute, I'm gonna share some things on how to prioritize the calendar. But what I'm going to encourage you to do is I want you to think about your time blocks. When you think about blocking, this is time blocking. Again, another strategy from Gary Keller's book, The One Thing. You have different time blocks. You have like one-time blocks, like it's a thing that it's like a one-off. For instance, we had an event. A couple weeks ago, I was meeting this guy for he had a 3-hour thing, workshop he was doing. So that was a one-time event. I knew about it about a month and a half ago. I added it to my calendar right away. I was able to add that so that I didn't have, so as I was looking at my calendar, and I also set reminders. So I had a 30-day reminder. I had a 3-week reminder. So I set reminders along the way that would continue to remind me, because remember, I may not see it as I'm logging in every day. Okay. So I know the difference between a one-time event versus a recurring regular event, which the regular event you set up in Google as a recurring. You want to use recurring so you don't have to think about it. Like for me, I don't want to have to think about things. I want to just be able to log in the morning and it tells me exactly what's next. So let me share now a few of the things that are on my priority list. This is my priority list. Okay. So here are the things that need to go on your blocked calendar. All right. Number one. Okay. And you can choose it. Maybe you want to put your vacations first. That's up to you. Okay. Vacations are either 1 or 2. All right. So I do 2 vacations every year. I want to get those on my calendar. Okay. The only exception to that is, like for instance, the real estate company I'm at, every company I've only been at 2, but the 2 companies I've had, annual events. So I would put my annual events on the calendar first, and then I could book my vacations around that, because I can't change the annual events, right? Like those events are going to happen. And if I want to go, I can't just call and say, hey, excuse me, Glenn. But yeah, I've got vacation planned during your summit. So no, it doesn't work like that. So I need to try to plan around that, right? Same thing. So now the second thing that's going on my list is going to be my personal vacations. Okay. I know the major events when they're happening. So now I can plan my vacations. The next thing I want to plan is strategic thought time. This is something I learned from being in Gary's mastermind. And this is a time block that I have every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern. I take about 45 minutes and I just think about my goals. I just spend time with myself. I go into my journal. I go into my planner, and it's just thought time. It's just time I have with myself. Sometimes I grab a cigar. Most times if I'm not training for a race, I'll grab a cigar, and that'll be my time to just sit back, relax, and just think about what's happening and my goals and where I am in life and our financial situation and everything. That's my thought time. And yeah, I love that time. And that time needs to be on your calendar as well. The next thing, lead generation. Listen, you have to have lead generation time. All right. Well, I guess it depends on where you are in your business. Maybe you're in a business now where other people are lead generating for you. That's fine. Okay. But if you're in the business still and you're still making calls, or you're still engaging with people, and you want to set that lead generation time, it's super, super critical. The other thing that's going to go in the calendar is lead follow-up. So as I'm doing lead generation, I need follow-up. All right. So that could be following up. It could be doing direct messages on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever. It could be making phone calls. It could be sending emails to people. It could be doing some social media, stalking, right? And figuring out what they're up to and sending them a DM. It is all ways to do follow-up. It could be following up on all the leads that didn't convert yet. You need to get the follow-up in your calendar. Then what I do is I like my business appointments to happen in the afternoon. So that's how I structure my calendar. Okay. I go from lead generation first. I want to do the hardest things first, because the hardest things are the ones, if you don't get them done in the morning, they typically won't get done. There's a really good book. I can't remember the author, but it's called Eat That Frog. And essentially the essence is get the hard things done first, the yucky things. So the lead generation, get it done first, get it prioritized, right? Next one, lead follow-up. And then I want to go on appointments in the afternoon. Another thing I want you to add to the calendar is date night. Date night. Listen, date night is critical, really, really important. That time with my wife. I mean, we date night once a month. It's not every week now, but it's once a month, and we take that time serious. So date night should be on your calendar. The other things that need to be on your calendar is, for me, and my daughter I bring my daughter to karate every Tuesday. So that's on my calendar. Okay. My kids' events, karate. We have Penelope that's in dance. I coach the softball team during the school year. So that's going to be in my calendar. That's under hobbies, different things I do. I spending time with my friends. All that stuff is in the calendar. So I'm not forgetting about this stuff. I'm not missing this stuff, because there's an old law that I like to live by. And the reason I live by it is mostly because of pain. That old, if it's not in your calendar, you guys can finish the sentence, right? If it's not in your calendar, it doesn't exist. That's what I'm talking about right now, making sure everything is in the calendar. And let me go to the final one now, which we're jumping to is going to be protected. And when I'm talking about protecting it, what I'm referring to now is building a bunker. And again, this is from the One Thing certification, which I am certified, by the way, to teach the one thing, building a bunker. So what does that mean? It means you're setting yourself up to be successful. I'm storing provisions. Okay. So I'm setting up my office. Okay. With water. I've got my water here. I've got my coffee up here. I've got snacks. I've got everything I need to be successful right here. So I don't have to leave. I don't have to stop. I don't have to go anywhere else. I can bunker myself in and get my priority work done, which is going to be the top 20% things I talked about on the calendar, as I shared my calendar earlier. Okay, the next thing you're going to do is sweep for minds. What does this mean? It means I'm looking for distractions. I'm turning off the notifications on this thing. I'm not going to be on a browser with Facebook open or LinkedIn open. I'm just doing my priority work. If I'm in the middle of writing, then I'm shutting off all electronics and I'm going over to my other desk over there, and I'm just going to write. I'm going to protect myself. I'm going to let my wife know what I'm up to, right? I'm going to use a different computer if needed. Those are the types of things I'm doing. I don't want any distractions. Okay. And sometimes my kids will run up here, which is cool. It's summertime. So I can live with that every once in a while. Okay. But for the most part, I want to cut all distractions. And that's what they're talking about when they say sweep for minds. The next one is going to be enlisting support. I'm looking for support. My wife is super supportive. She will support me. Okay. I remember going years back, we had times where, both of us got frustrated because I would be doing my thing and she would, my wife's super social and she would want to just chat, come chat with me and chat it up. And I'm like, hon, I'm working. Like, she's like, well, I know, but see, she didn't understand how important that was to me. So I had to have that conversation with her and explain to her how, man, this is my time block time. So I love you, hon, but outside of, let me get through this time. And then after 12 o'clock, yeah, let's do it. Let's grab lunch. Let's do something. And then she started to understand me and how I operate and how I work. And she appreciates it now. I have to let my assistant know. I have to enlist my assistant in this as well. So she knows the expectations. She sometimes helps keep me accountable. I have to share my expectations with my clients, my sellers, right? To sellers. Hey, I just want to let you know, I return phone calls, after 11 a.m., unless we're in a negotiation or something, but I want to set expectations with them as well. It's critical. And then the fourth one is I enlist accountability. And hey, for you guys who don't realize it, we're actually streaming live on StreamYard, on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. That's the link up top is for LinkedIn if you want to join us on LinkedIn. And so the fourth one is the accountability. And for this one, I like my coach. I always want to let my coach know what my goals are for the day. And I want him to hold me accountable on our weekly calls, asking me how I did with my appointments. Also, my kids, you want to be held accountable, let your kids know. Your kids will be happy to keep you accountable. Okay. Also, your wife, your accountability partner, if you have one. So let me share another pro tip. There's another pro tip I use. I know myself, you may be better than me, but I use a 45-minute sand timer. It's a 45-minute timer. And what I do is I'll use the timer and I flip the timer and I won't do anything else for 45 minutes. Then once it's done, that's when I can, I'll take a break. I'll maybe use the restroom. I'll just relax, vent for a minute, right? Just kind of wind down, breathe, whatever. Sometimes I'll use it in my meditate. So I like 45-minute blocks. That's what I'm really good at personally. Like I can stay super focused for 45 minutes and then I need some kind of a mental break. So that's why I love the sand timer. I got one. Oh man, it was right here. The one I got, I just went on Amazon. It was like $15 and it's 45 minutes. You can get them for an hour. You can get them for less time, but that's the one that works really well for me. So I do everything in 45-minute chunks within my time block. So that's my schedule. That's my calendar. So let me share again the 4 simple strategies here. So this is not, like I said, this is not complicated. That's why I said the 4 simple strategies. So number 1 is set it, so we're setting standards. We're setting goals. Number 2 is plan it. And when I say plan it, I'm saying plan to win. Plan to win. My old accountant used to say, if you're not planning to fail, if you're not planning to win, you're planning to fail. But if you're not planning to win, you're planning to fail. And just to back up with the set it, that I'm going back to the alarm clock because I know some of you guys weren't here when I started this, but the first thing I talked about is the most important goal of your day is going to be your alarm clock, the clock that goes off in the morning. We can't ignore that. That's the most important goal of the day. So figure out what time you're going to be 100% committed to getting up and never hit that snooze button. Make that first commitment for yourself. Make that standard. Then plan it. Figure out how you're going to do that. Like I shared with you how, I had to stop drinking coffee after 3 p.m. I had to start eating dinner early with the kids, getting the kids winded down earlier with my wife. We'd had to get them in bed earlier. I'd have to be in bed earlier, but I had to line up all those dominoes in order for me to start getting up earlier. Because if I just said, I'm going to get up earlier, but yet, I'm caffeinated at 10 p.m. The kids are still running around the house. We didn't eat dinner till, 6, 7 p.m. It's going to be really hard for me to get up in the morning. So I had to plan that out. The next one is block it. So again, everything is in my calendar. Everything's in my electronic calendar. And then it goes every morning from my electronic calendar to my paper planner calendar. And then finally, number 4 is protect it. I had to learn to protect it. And I need to recruit others to help me protect it. And those are the 4 strategies. Those are the 4 strategies that I wanted to share with you today. And if anybody's interested, I coach and I train. So if you're interested in discussing what that looks like, I have a 15-minute strategy session that I do. You can go to schedule.pathtomastery.net. If you would like to jump on a strategy session, feel free. That's the link, schedule.pathtomastery.net. If you're interested in exploring what it would look like to coach with us, or even some of our training. I do different training. I've got a sales execution workshop coming up in the next month. Just a lot of really good things happening. So I just want to say first, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your time. I'm going to see if we have any questions. I have about another 10 minutes. So do we have any questions from anybody? We've got, looks like we had a couple people here on LinkedIn Live. If you have any questions, you can type them in the chat, or on Clubhouse, same thing. Looks like we've got some people on Clubhouse. We had about 30 people through here. So do you want to either type in the chat if you have a question, or if you want to raise your hand and come up and ask me the question, feel free. So let's see. Do we have any questions? All right, I'll give it a few seconds. Doesn't look like we have any questions on Clubhouse. And let me look at the chat. Okay, I'm not seeing anything in the chat here. So, well, listen, that said then, I think I'll wrap with that. And just again, I want to really quickly go through the 4 is number 1, set it. We're talking about standards and goals. Number 2, plan it. All right. I want you to plan to win. I want you to plan out your whole day, your whole schedule. Use the domino run that Gary Keller talks about. Okay. Set those dominoes up the right way. If you want to wake up at a certain time every morning, it actually starts the day before. Remember that. I want you to block it. Okay. I want you to block it. I want you to create a calendar. Everything's in your calendar. Okay. Everything you're planning, you're set. You know the annual events you're going to do. You know your personal vacations. You have your kids' events in there. Everything is in there. Your lead generation, your thought time. I need you to block it in the calendar. And then finally, protect it. We have to protect it. We have to enlist support. We have to recruit support. We have to build a bunker and protect it. So that said, I just want to say I appreciate you. Let me look one last time, see if we have any questions. It does not look like we do. So that said, I want to say thank you for your time. And if you need anything, send me a direct message. I'd love to connect with you. Thanks.